Welcome, everyone, to our class today. I'm Eric, an English teacher, and I am so excited to jump into today's topic with all of you.
And I'm Jane, also an English teacher. We've got a really fun and uh, super practical session planned for you today.
Yeah, we really do. Because, the illusion of fluency is just this uniquely frustrating trap.
Oh, complete.
Like, you spend years acquiring a language.
Mm.
You consume the media, you understand complex grammar, you can read academic papers without even breaking a sweat.
Right? The textbook stuff.
Exactly. But then, the moment you get thrown into a dynamic, unscripted environment, say, a noisy international conference mixer,
Mm.
and someone approaches you with a fast, casual greeting, your brain just completely stalls.
It's like a freeze response.
Yeah, all that vast knowledge you've built up suddenly feels, I don't know, entirely inaccessible. So whether you're brushing up on your language skills, talking with international colleagues, or just like fascinated by how conversations work, today's lesson is going to help.
It really highlights the huge divide between knowing how a language works on paper and actually operating it in real time,
Yeah.
especially under social pressure.
Right, because traditional education models focus almost exclusively on the rules, right? The,
Yeah.
the vocabulary lists, the structural blueprints.
Exactly. But fluid conversation relies on procedural memory. It operates in milliseconds. So when you're standing in that conference room trying to parse grammar rules while also reading social cues,
And trying to formulate a response.
right, you are simply overwhelming your brain's working memory. It's just too much at once.
And that cognitive bottleneck is exactly what we are examining today. We're looking at a fantastic guide called Essential English Phrases for Natural Conversation.
It's such a great resource.
It really is. And our goal isn't just to review basic vocabulary. We want to deconstruct the mechanics behind natural phrasing to help you sound confident and effortlessly natural.
So the central idea of this guide is that you have to abandon the habit of building sentences from scratch during live communication.
It's just too slow, right?
Way too slow. If you are translating a concept into your native language and then translating that into English word by word, the delay is too high. So the text advocates for a strategy called chunking.
Chunking, I love that term.
Yeah, it basically means storing and using entire phrases as single units rather than individual words.
It makes me think of, well, translating word for word is like trying to do complex math in your head while someone is just staring at you.
That is the perfect analogy. It's terrifying.
Right. But learning in chunks is like muscle memory. You don't think about the physics of it, you just swing the baseball bat.
Exactly. By preloading these chunks, you bypass all that heavy lifting in your brain. You free up bandwidth to actually pay attention to the conversation.
So let's look at how the guide applies this to everyday situations, like survival phrases for when you totally miss what someone just said.
Oh, this happens to everyone. And the textbook response is usually this rigid, literal translation of confusion.
Like, I do not understand what you were saying to me.
Right, which usually ends up sounding overly formal or even accusatory.
Yeah, it violates all the unspoken rules of politeness. It places the blame right on the speaker. But the natural chunks in the guide are so much better.
Phrases like, "Can you say that again, please?" Or, "I didn't quite get that."
Or my personal favorite. Sorry, I'm a bit lost. Could you explain? It operates on a totally different psychological level.
It really does. It functions as a conversational shock absorber. By saying, "I'm a bit lost," you take the burden of the miscommunication onto yourself.
Which neutralizes any defensiveness from the other person.
Exactly. It signals a team failure, not an individual one. Plus, it's a brilliant stalling tactic to buy your brain a few seconds to catch up.
And the counter chunk to that is just as strategic. Like, when someone else admits they are confused, the guide suggests saying, no worries, take your time.
I use that one all the time.
It's so empathetic. It isn't just a throwaway phrase. It actively de-escalates social anxiety and lowers the pressure.
And lowering that pressure is key because everyday social life is basically a constant flow of low-stakes negotiations.
Yeah, like running errands.
Yeah.
Let's move into navigating public and social life. Shopping, ordering food, that kind of thing.
Those scenarios operate on very predictable scripts. We already know the sequence of events at a coffee shop, so we don't need to invent new language for it.
Right. So we use chunks like, could I get this to go? Or do you have this in a different size or color?
And then, "I'll take it," when you decide to buy. They are highly utilitarian phrases.
But the guide also gives us the ultimate conversational shield. When a salesperson approaches you and you just want to be left alone, you say, I'm just browsing, thanks.
It's a fantastic piece of linguistic armor.
It really is. It asserts your boundary without being rude. It just gracefully terminates the interaction.
Now, that's quite a contrast to how we handle introductions, where the goal is actually to start an interaction.
Yeah, but you still want to mitigate social risk.
Exactly. The standard, nice to meet you, I'm Jane, is straightforward. But in group settings, the guide suggests saying, I don't think we've met, I'm Jane.
I love that chunk so much. There is such a sophisticated layer of risk management there.
It heavily mitigates the embarrassment of, well, forgetting that you've already met someone.
Yes, because saying, I don't think we've met, frames it as a guess, not a hard fact. It leaves a psychological backdoor open for them to say, actually, we met last year.
It preserves dignity for both parties. And preserving dignity is a huge part of modern conversational English, especially when making plans.
Setting up a social life can be exhausting. So having standard chunks like, are you free this weekend? Or let's grab a coffee sometime is super helpful.
Or how does Friday sound?
Yeah, but I want to push back on the immediacy of those because the guide includes one phrase that I think is absolute brilliance. I'll let you know by tomorrow.
Ah, yes, the graceful delay tactic.
Why do textbooks never teach this? It is essential for introverts or just anyone managing a busy schedule. You don't always have to say yes or no right on the spot.
It's basically asynchronous social buffering. As our lives get more hyper-scheduled, the pressure of real-time commitment is huge.
Too huge.
So, I'll let you know by tomorrow works like a socially acceptable pause button.
Mm-hmm.
You acknowledge the invite, but defer the heavy lifting of actually checking your calendar.
It totally challenges the assumption that fluency means always having an immediate answer. Sometimes fluency is just knowing how to stall politely.
Which brings up a broader point about English culture. We tend to soften our language a lot, especially when expressing internal feelings.
Oh, for sure. Which brings us to the nuance of emotion and the workplace. Expressing extreme happiness is easy, right? I'm over the moon about this.
Or, I'm really looking forward to it. But when it comes to frustration or negative emotions, native speakers heavily favor mitigation. We hedge.
We use linguistic dimmers. Like, instead of just saying, I am angry, you say, that's a bit frustrating, to be honest.
Or the very modern, I'm not going to lie, that stressed me out.
Those modifiers, to be honest, I'm not going to lie, a bit, they take the harsh glare off the emotion.
Exactly. By framing it as a reluctant confession, you invite empathy instead of making the other person defensive.
It's such a sophisticated way to build rapport while still basically complaining. And this casual honesty translates directly to the modern office, too.
Workplace language has evolved so much, rigid formal hierarchies are kind of fading out.
Yeah, now we use phrases like, let's touch base later this week, or I'll get back to you on that.
Or could we push the meeting back a bit? It's a much more fluid, collaborative model of communication.
But wait, I have a question about one of the phrases the guide recommends here. It says you can use, I'm swamped right now, can this wait?
Uh-huh.
Doesn't that sound a little too casual? Like, if you say that to a boss, isn't there a risk of sounding insubordinate?
Well, it definitely challenges older, super strict management styles, but it actually aligns perfectly with current flexible work cultures.
Oh, interesting. So it's more about transparency.
Exactly. Psychological safety is huge right now. Honest communication about your bandwidth is often valued way more than just blindly saying yes to everything.
So by saying, I'm swamped, you aren't refusing the work. You're just signaling a capacity limit to prevent a failure down the line.
Right. And pairing it with, can this wait, shows you want to solve the problem collaboratively. It replaces performative deference with practical honesty.
That makes a lot of sense. But of course, asserting boundaries inevitably creates some social friction. Which brings us to our final section, the art of disagreement.
This is the ultimate test of fluency, not just expressing yourself, but handling friction without ruining the relationship.
Because when adrenaline spikes during an argument, your working memory completely collapses. You absolutely need these automatic preloaded chunks.
For polite pushback, the guide highlights the phrase, I see where you're coming from, but...
Oh, that is the linguistic equivalent of a judo redirection.
It really is. You validate their perspective before introducing your counterargument. It absorbs their momentum and reduces their need to aggressively defend their position.
And if things still get tense, you have a de-escalation protocol ready. Just say, let's not make a big deal out of this.
It's an active intervention to stop a minor issue from turning into a massive conflict.
But my absolute favorite phrase in this whole section is simply, fair enough.
It is so elegant.
It's basically a conversational pressure release valve. It allows you to gracefully accept someone's point without fully conceding defeat. Pure diplomacy.
It acknowledges that their point is reasonable without claiming it as absolute truth. And knowing how to use those valves is crucial, especially when you need to wrap things up.
Right, because you can't just abruptly walk away from a conversation that's universally seen as rude. You have to land the plane.
You need signals like, well, that about covers it. That's a definitive pivot to show the topic is done.
Or the classic, let's call it a day. That one carries so much weight, it gives everyone a psychological sense of shared accomplishment.
It transitions the group back to individual time, and then you follow it up with a casual goodbye, like, catch you later.
Which maintains the relationship without putting a strict timeline on when you'll actually see them next. It's brilliant.
So, synthesizing all of this, real English is informal, it's flexible, and it relies heavily on these natural patterns to reduce social friction.
Which brings us to the final action plan for you, the listener. Here is your homework from today's lesson. Pick 5 sentences we discussed today and force yourself to use them in your next conversation.
Yes. And a huge practice tip from the guide: record yourself saying these phrases out loud.
Don't just read them silently.
Right. Repetition in real contexts makes these chunks stick. Hearing your own voice using natural English builds that procedural memory and confidence.
It really bridges the gap between knowing a phrase and actually owning it.
Yeah.
And before we go, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought.
Oh, let's hear it.
Think about how your personality might actually shift when you use these natural chunks. When you stop translating word for word and start using the casual rhythms of the language, do you become a slightly different person?
That's a fascinating concept.
Maybe a more relaxed or more assertive version of yourself. Because you're using tools specifically designed to reduce friction and manage boundaries effortlessly.
It really changes your internal experience of the interaction.
Exactly. So pay attention to how your personality transforms the next time you drop the translation effort and just execute the script out in the real world. Something fun to ponder. Thank you so much for joining our class today.
It's been wonderful having you all.
Catch you later.